Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Let's see. All right, my name is Kira Slosser. If you forget my name, then it's right on my blouse. Slosser, that's how you spell it if you're going to be doing those forms. Today, I'm going to be looking at revising the FM 21-20 using physical therapy concepts to improve the Army physical training requirements. Let's see how this works. All right, first, before I begin, I would like to acknowledge some people. Stephen Caruso, he is my biology advisor. I also have an advisor, Michael Nolan, that wasn't able to be here today, but I also thank him very much. Carrie Sauter, she's my INDS advisor. She's seen me through thick and thin, so I thank you very much. And as well as the entire INDS department. I mean, I've had you for so many different things, and you've helped me grow throughout INDS as well as my entire college career, so thank you. As well as thank you to the Army. I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the Army, so thank you very much. All right, so to actually begin, I would like to start off with a game, so if everyone could stand up. Does everyone know how to play Simon Says? Yeah? Okay, so first, Simon Says, touch your nose. Grab your ears. Simon Says, grab your ears. Simon Says, grab your thighs. Do a backflip. Darn, you almost did it. Okay. Simon Says, anyone with a knee problem, sit down. Those remaining, Simon Says, do a circular rotation like this. All right, continue doing that for my presentation. No, you can go ahead and take a seat, everyone. We're done playing Simon Says now. But please, those who weren't able to participate, make sure that you notice what they did, and those that were participating, remember what you just did and how it felt, because it's going to come into play in a little bit. So let's go back to this first. Revising the FM 21-20. What does that mean? An FM in the Army means field manual. The 21-20 is a physical training field manual. So that's broken down into how you outline workouts for the Army, for soldiers. And it normally encompasses a warm-up, conditioning, and a cool-down. So why physical therapy concepts? Well, I really enjoy physical therapy, and someday I would like to become a physical therapist. And I believe that physical therapist is kind of like a way of life. It not only takes into consideration rehabilitation and maintenance, but it also has a lot to do with preventative maintenance, which is very important with my studies. And why the Army? Well, I'm going to be in the Army, and this has a lot to do with my future. So to start off, I'm going to teach you guys some Army jargon. It's called BLUF, bottom line up front. So what is the point? Why am I here today? Why am I taking up your time and talking to you about this FM that you will probably never see in your life? Well, you will probably meet some soldiers in your life. And so this has to do a lot with them. So the current FM practices are outdated and can actually sometimes be detrimental to a soldier's anatomy. There are better exercises out there, but they're not being utilized for some reason. And some of the major reasons that I found that they're not being utilized, I have seen that sociology and policy play a big role. So to kind of pinpoint one of the major problems with the FM, the knees and ankles rotation is a big problem in my eyes. Knees and ankles rotation. So what is it? Let's go through all of these questions right here. Who is it for? It's for soldiers. What is it for? It's for the FM 21-20. Where is it for? It focuses on the knees and ankles, but mostly the knees. When is it conducted? Normally in the warm-up section. Why? All right, there's this thing called proprioception, and it's the knowledge of where your body is, where your muscles are. Are they flexing, contracting, extending? Is what angle my joints are? And how? How is it performed? Well, do you remember doing Simon Says? When you bent down and started doing that rotation? That's exactly, you guys did it perfectly, actually. That's exactly how it is performed. Never do it again, but that's exactly how it's performed. So when you did it, I want you to kind of think about, did it feel awkward? Did you hear some people's knees pop? Did you feel a little unbalanced? I mean, that guy looks unbalanced, I think. So before I could improve on this exercise, I had to do some research. First, I started with my prior experience. I've done internships in the military as well as in the medical field with physical therapists. And I've also had knee surgery, which I got to understand the knee a little bit better after that knee surgery. Next, I used my UMBC courses. I had plenty of biology courses and sociology and psychology courses, as well as some HAP courses, which is Health Administration and Political Policy. And then I got into the journal articles. So major journal articles I looked at had a lot of statistics, a lot of number crunching, but what I really focused on was the case studies. There are plenty of case studies out there on health and exercise and injury that I got to look at, and I had to sort through. And I also got some advice from professionals. I'm in an internship right now, and I know a physical therapist, personal trainer, some doctors. I just kind of went to them and asked them to give me a little bit of direction of where I should go with this. So biology. In my studies, I found that some major concepts in biology are anatomy and physiology, as one might presume. So what I focused on in anatomy and physiology are injuries and malfunctions, how these injuries cause malfunctions, how malfunctions can cause injuries. And to do this, I looked a lot at surgery, physical therapy, and personal training, because both of these are kind of integrated and a strange concept in and of themselves. So for the sociology and policy section, the major concepts I thought of were groupthink, diffused responsibility, right versus wrong. I mean, that's something that you've learned ever since you were a child. Process, and a major one is power. So resources that I used for that were the HAP program as well, and actually even U.S. Government a little bit. I mean, obviously I'm part of the U.S. government, but the processes that they use, the way that they go about making their policy. So this is kind of an idea of, you know, how complex and integrated it can all be. I mean, the one thing that I really want to point out is this power and how it connects to hierarchy, and what a big role I think everyone knows that plays in the Army. So integration. How did I put all of this together? Well, Simon Says kind of used an analogy. The Army is kind of telling you what to do and when to do it and how to do it, and you don't do it unless I tell you to. But what I really focused on was building complex and multi-causal explanations. So what that meant to me was, what is wrong and why is it wrong? Which I explained earlier. Bridging the explanation-action gap is what I will get to soon. How can we fix this? So here's the problem. The knee is very complex. You see there are all of these ligaments, there's some cushioning right here, there's bones, and this is hyaline cartilage. It's a lot of medical words, but basically it's very complex, and that means that it can be injured in many different ways. Now see this guy? I don't know if anyone's seen this, but this depicts the hierarchy. This sociology that is Simon Says that I was talking about. And the policy, that is, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Well, I think this is broken. So this is how I suggest to fix it. Utilize the interdisciplinarity that the health administration concept already has. Create a checks and balances system where if someone has a question or a problem with something, they don't feel scared to go to a superior and tell them about it. create a possibility of amendments. We can keep the huge FM 21-20, but we can take the exercises that are wrong and we can change them a little bit. And we can substitute them with ones such as this. Now if I can get everyone to stand back up, hold your arms out like this, and just bring your knees up as far as you can. This creates proprioception. You guys understand where your body is. You can go ahead and sit down. And it's much safer for the body. So in conclusion, in the future, if you feel like you want to do a knees and ankles rotation, please do what is also called the Frankenstein or mummy. Do I have any questions?
So you now have a remedy.
Yes.
What's your next steps for taking this remedy further?
So I'm fortunately, as a cadet currently, and in 2 weeks I will be an officer, I won't really have any authority because of the hierarchy that we have. But how I plan on using this information that I gathered is for my platoon. I'm going to be a platoon leader. And I will be in charge of very young people, some 18s, maybe 20-year-olds, about 20 of them. And so I'm going to take this knowledge of how I need to integrate my body, my mind, social concepts, and bring it into a policy that I'm going to force upon them.
Yeah, so you described one example of an exercise that you didn't like. Were there others? Was it a whole batch of things that you didn't like, or was it just a few sporadic things?
Well, actually, the Army has noticed that there's something wrong with this entire program. What they're focusing on right now is the test. It's called an APFT, Army Physical Fitness Test. And the reason why they decided that it was so important for them to change this test is because one of the tests in it is doing sit-ups. And soldiers were working so hard because they wanted to do so well that they were actually tearing abdominal muscles and injuring themselves while trying to do well on this test. So the Army is in the process of changing that. And if I had to pinpoint one thing that I had a problem with, it would be sit-ups. I think most people know that crunches are even better than sit-ups. But the Army's already taking control of changing that, so I wanted to focus on something that they weren't taking control of yet.
I noticed you didn't interview physical therapists as part of your methodology.
I didn't want to do any actual interviews because experience plays a big role in physical therapy and rehabilitation. The place that I'm interning at right now is a rehabilitation clinic, and they talk about a lot of different rehabilitation places. They have these binders in the waiting room that talk about their success stories, and depending on those success stories can change the way that they practice. So I didn't want to use opinions so much as use their guidance onto what they think I should look further into.
You would have to go through the IRB. You know what the IRB
To do
is.
the interviews.
But
yes.
it would seem to me that if you were to carry forth further to interview Army physical therapists who actually treat
These issues, yes.
these issues, would give you a feel that legitimately help you understand it further. Did you consider that?
I did. Because of the Simon Says stuff, a lot of military personnel in general, they don't really want to talk about problems in the military because it goes against the organization. And it's a limitation of ours. So it helped when I was I mean, I could be able to do something like that if I worked through contracted physical therapists in the military, but the Army would rather pay it its own because they pay them less. So they're a lot harder to find.
Could you say a little bit more about the advantage of taking an interdisciplinary approach? So you mentioned bridging this gap between explaining what the problem is and the actions. How did different disciplines help you explain and help you create an action or solution?
Okay, so I broke it down into kind of the slides. There was the biology slide and then the sociology and policy slide. And I really think the sociology and policy was very integrated. The biology is integrated in that somewhat. I mean, it has concepts in it that are integrated, but not really what I was focusing on for the biology section. So to integrate the sociology and the policy section, I think policy, especially say in democracy versus, I don't know, parliamentary. There are different ways that sociological views change the way that the government works, or that the government changes the way that people view sociology amongst themselves. For example, we change our president every 4 years. And for us, we think that's great and refreshing and new ideas and everything. But other countries, they have lifetimes of dictators or this or that, and it keeps stability, they think. So there are different ideas that are more important in one culture than another. That culture I took to be as a sociological view.
Our physical therapist back there. Go ahead.
You want me to think of a physical therapy question?
Whatever question you have.
Stop, there we go. Okay, so the program is for field maintenance or management. Is that what FM stands for?
Field manual.
Okay, there it is. Okay, so what does this program target to do? Is it for like getting soldiers ready for combat, kind of like stabilizing, or like so they learn how to like stabilize their body in the right position with all their equipment? Is that what this program is for? Is that what it's just trained to do?
That's actually a really good question. I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you put her on the spot because no, it's not for combat readiness. It's just for general fitness. The Army wants generally fit soldiers, and they want it to be across the board because we have active soldiers, reservists, people that you hear about 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. They obviously aren't going to be training the same way as active duty soldiers overseas are. So what the Army does with the FM is they just create this blanket, concept of how to get fit and the process and an outline for it. For combat readiness, we have our own training.
Did you compare like other nations, like Army field manuals, like to see if there were any difference or like any better like exercise programs?
I actually found this one article, and it talked about and I loved it. It was perfect. In Australia, what they were doing with their soldiers, because they were having an issue with their field manual. They called it something different, but basically their field manual for physical training. And so they did a case study, and they took some soldiers and continued them on the field manual that they had, and then they took these other soldiers and they changed it up a little bit. And they used some physical therapy concepts. They used actually some psychology concepts. Get a happier soldier or a happier worker is a more productive worker. I'm sure you've probably heard. And they found a lot of improvements, not just in the health physically, but also mentally, and a lot less injury. So, yeah, absolutely.
When you say the manual is outdated, how outdated is it, and how long do you think these new breakthroughs would last?
The Army does this thing where they do revisions, and so they take a field manual, which is hundreds of pages long, and they'll go through it and they'll say, that page, take it out. That page, take it out. I mean, obviously it's not that random, but it's kind of what it looked like to me. Technically, their last revision was 1998, but I looked at the 1992 version and only 2 pages were different. And they were taking information from the, I think, 1960s.
This is a really important issue, isn't it? Because there are a lot of questions being raised about people being excluded from the military because they're so unfit, such high obesity rates and a lack of fitness. This is a very pressing issue, so it seems to be very important that you're doing this kind of project.
Yes, and you bring up a good point where the Army likes to say, you don't meet these standards, you can't be in the Army. So if you have hurt knees, you can't be in the Army. But we're willing to hurt your knees, that doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Anyone else?
I think your future, you want to have a career in the Army, correct?
In 2 weeks, I will be commissioned as a second lieutenant.
And are you willing to take on the power struggles for change that you think may open up some of these questions, not just the ones you've identified by others, or do you think that the Army is so entrenched in the way it operates that that's not something you could do?
Well, because our president changes every 4 years.
Wait a minute.
Not
We have an
necessarily.
election every 4 years.
I'm sorry, exactly. Because we have an election every 4 years, the United States kind of decides what's more important for them with those elections. And when that happens, the military is highly involved. We just got, I think, something like 25% of our budget cut. And because of that, the Army's had to do changes here, there, everywhere. They're getting rid of a lot of equipment, very expensive equipment. And because of that, the higher-ups are having to change their mentality about things. And so I do think that sometime in the future, we are going to be more cognizant of the holistic soldier, not just, boots on the ground, as you might hear, but the entire being in and out of uniform. So I hope that I will be able to help contribute to that.
All right, we've given you a lot of time. If there are any other questions, please raise your hand. Thank you very much, Kira.
All right, thank you.